Good morning. This is Bill Kennick. We're doing astrology, and this is Tuesday, January the 23rd of the year 2024. Now, a question came up this morning. I was talking to my preacher at Burger King, and I usually go in there in the morning for coffee, and he occasionally comes in for coffee. Well, it was the first warm day in the last week or so, so he showed up. So naturally, things have come up in my life, and I questioned him. He gave me a very wise answer. So I calculated a chart for that. And these charts are kind of an experiment. These charts that I've been doing in the last few days about World War III and issues in the world come up as a result of, an intuitive spark on my part to ask the question just then. And there's kind of a leap of faith here. Now, we're talking about the end of the world. We could put the chart for alliance, as much as Jerusalem, let's say, But when I'm asking a question about Jerusalem itself, should I make the chart for there? Or should I make the chart for here, where here I am in time, space, and I'm the one asking the question? And is it any of my business to ask the question about what's going to happen to them? Now, with the issue of World War III, it would be, you could say, well, yeah, that has something to do with you, because if we have World War III, the whole Earth might catch fire, and that would ultimately involve you too. But if we're asking about some sort of slayings in Jerusalem, then what business do you have asking the question? Point one, and shouldn't you calculate it for the longitude and latitude of Palestine rather than Alliance, Ohio, where I happen to be? So the reason I call this an experiment is because I'm calculating the chart for Alliance, Ohio. Now, is that just because I'm lazy? Well, yeah, partly. I use the service at astro.com, which is absolutely free. But in doing so, I let them remember my longitude and latitude of Alliance, Ohio. And I could change it, with some small effort. But when you're lazy, it looks like a great effort. So, be advised that what I'm doing, and you might disagree that that's really smart. Another thing I'm doing that's not really smart is I'm facing the wall here, and the sun is then reflecting on my glasses. But hopefully you'll care less about my face than about the chart right next to it, which is the horary chart we were going to be looking at. Now, my question was actually about something that I got double-crossed by a sister of mine, see? And so it had something to do with something personal that, was very upsetting to me at the time. And then my pastor, Nicky was his name, he said, your niece and nephew are going to throw you out of the house if you ever move there, and so on. So in other words, that was a very personal thing, and I can't calculate the chart on that basis. But because the planets are so very interesting, I thought I'd see if I could apply this to the world. And, you know, the world based on the fact that there was a lot of wars just preparing to begin to start, and maybe they have already started. So, but what was so interesting about it, if you we'll start with that. You notice that coming right down the middle of the chart, there are two blue lines, you know, that are parallel. And one of the on the right hand side, as we look at it, we see in the 9th house Moriarty, and down in the 5th house, Moriarty being in the 9th house, no, the 8th house. Sorry, the 8th house. Coming down, we have Vulcanus in 3 degrees 25, being in the 5th house. Now notice Moriarty's in 324, and that's the house of birth, death, and other people's money. And this question had something to do with other people's money, in a way, other people's property. The 5th house is the house of pleasure or play, but notice it's very, very, very close, 1 degree of 1 minute of aspect, Vulcanus. So mighty, whatever Moriarty is. Now Moriarty in the story Sherlock Holmes was an arch criminal, so he was a thief and you know, criminality, mighty criminality. And being in the 8th house of money and death, you know, now looking on the other side, we have the sun, also in 3. Now notice that is the exact sextile. Well, okay, it's in 3 something. $326. And Mitos down here is in 3 something, also a very, very close aspect. And when we put those two together, there's different ways we could do it. We could make a planetary picture of any 3 points, and then if a 4th one occupies the space, that's very interesting, you know, because what that means is these two have the same midpoint. But also, see, what's so interesting, they're all in 3, so they all form traditional aspects as well. So from Moriarty, you know, in 3 of Sag, we have the sun in 3 of Aquarius, sextile. Then we have a trine from the sun down here to Admetos, which has something to do with rotation and downward spiraling in the house of money. So the sun Admetos, and what does that mean now? That means unable to move or downward spiraling. And then Moriarty Vulcanus. Now, see, another thing we can do is, we all know what the sun means, you know, as a fairly, it means just about everything, but it means, you know, corporeal, it means the body, you know, it means the health, all the things that the sun is supposed to bring. So that's, you know, kind of, there's no special words that would go to the sun. And Vulcanus means greater, mighty. That's the key word for Vulcanus is mighty. So, and you notice they're opposite, by the way, in 3. But you know, mighty good health, or mighty, you know, corporeal health, integrity. Admetos means it's confined somewhat, but again, it's not. Well, that it has more descriptions. Well, we're looking for the planet. We're looking to understand Moriarty, which we have no particular history on, other than its name, and there could be somebody's name that wasn't Sherlock Holmes's Moriarty. For example, there was an actor in some TV show about Baltimore cops whose name was Michael Moriarty. So very clearly he wasn't the same Moriarty as Sherlock Holmes' Moriarty. But I'm, from a mythical quality, I would say Moriarty of Sherlock Holmes is the one I pick, is more likely with the one that was intended. But again, what does this mean? Criminal mastermind? Or is there some more general meaning, like badness or high intelligence? Because Moriarty was, a genius, right? Or criminal intelligence, maybe. We're getting closer. See, criminal intelligence. Mighty criminal intelligence, mighty volcanus, criminal intelligence, admitos now, but some sort of constraints or deep concentration of criminal intelligence as related to the body. Now, then we ask ourselves, okay, those are the abstract meanings. What does this have to do with your conversation with your preacher? Well, he said one thing. Preacher Nicky said one thing. He said, it wasn't the last thing he said, but he said one thing is, when people know you're gone from town, if you're planning to spend half your time up at your sister's house, they will break into your house. And I said, what if they find nothing? Well, then they'll be mad and they'll trash your house. They'll destroy everything that's in it. If there's nothing saleable, like no power saws. I think power saws is what ends up at the pawn shop the most. But if there's no power saws to steal, then they'll trash your house because they're mad. Well, what does that have to do with Moriarty? That would be something Moriarty would be interested in, because if he runs a crime ring, then he will have an interest in any power saws that might be available coming out of your house. Moriarty in this chart is in the 8th house of other people's property. So we're talking about a theft ring. And seems to me, I had a friend in this town one time whose grandfather was running a theft ring, and they compared him to a character out of Charles Dickens. It might have been Oliver Twist. Somebody who ran a theft ring, and it was all the power saws. He would hire young boys to go steal power saws, and then he would pay them, I'm making up numbers, but $1, and then he'd sell the power saw to the pawn shop for $5, thereby, profiting from his crime ring. There was a guy in Charles Dickens that did that. They compared this guy to. So that's a Moriarty maybe type of idea. And also the conversation refers to, well, they might break into your house and take what you've got, which is you know, I don't think they could take the piano, but they might take the power saw, and you know, they might take the portable piano that you see over my shoulder. But the idea of the crime ring is interesting, and the fact that Moriarty is in the 8th house, and that has something to do with our conversation just before I calculated this horoscope. Now again, I say, now what does that got? Does that have anything to do with World War III? In other words, these planets are so tight and so close. Now you could say, well, it's the sun with three very obscure. There's an asteroid, and you know. Now I didn't pick that asteroid out of the 30,000 for this question, by the way. I mean, the 30,000 asteroids are there, but I picked this asteroid, you know, a year ago. It says I'm going to work with this asteroid and see if I can figure out what its meaning is. And so Vulcanus being a Uranian system planet, which I've used for 40 years anyway, you know, that means mighty. It's a greatness, great amount of something or other. So they use the keyword mighty. Admetos is supposed to be like a super Saturn, or the higher octave of Saturn. But it also has to do with rotary motion. Now, interestingly, I'm not going to do it right now, but I had a question about buying a record player. And there was Admetos was on the 7th house of that horary question. So the 7th house being something that, you know, I'm contemplating directly buying. You know, I'm the 1st house. The 7th house is something I'm contemplating taking action on. And there was Admetos, the planet of rotary motion. And since I was talking about buying a record player, you know, the rotary motion is the wheel going round and round. So that was kind of an interesting take on Admetos. Now, there's other kind of rotary motions, but you find a lot of them in mechanical machinery, like your automobile, for example. Would, you know. Another meaning of Admetos is spinning your wheels. Spinning your wheels generally means that, you know, your wheels are going round and round, but you're slipping on ice and you're not getting anywhere, or you're just going back to the same point over and over. And that's why you know, Admetos can also mean deep concentration, but it can also mean being locked in a loop that you can't get out of, which is getting you nowhere. Or you could be locked in a loop that is getting you somewhere. I mean, whether it's getting you nowhere or getting you somewhere would depend on the aspects of Admetos. But the fact that you're going around and round on it is the Admetos factor. Intense concentration to the point of driving you nuts. Well, it could be. But here now we have intense concentration of 3 Admetos to the sun. Okay, well, it's opposite Moriarty and trine the sun, and a sextile of Vulcanus. Now, there's one other interesting thing. Notice there's 29 degrees on the midheaven. In other words, things are just about to change. And in fact, I calculated a chart for a minute later, or 5 minutes later, where that midheaven had changed to 0 of the next sign. Now, notice there's Venus is up there. In 0, along with Waldamath in 0. And you know, I don't know if Waldamath has already moved to 3. Where yesterday we had Venus and Waldamath conjunct in 29. And if you look at my previous video, I think we were going into some length at Venus Waldamath being some sort of bitchiness. Now Waldamath is Lilith, see. So what happens when you have Lilith and love? And I looked at that question again on the internet. If you Waldamath is not too popular, but if you could type, you know, if you type into the internet, you get a question of Lilith and Venus, and then Lilith represents your most hidden, most repressed, darkest desire. And in a way, the most shameful desire you have. See? And for some reason, our society seems to think that the things you do about sex are related to the most hidden desires, you know. I mean, they don't talk about cluster munitions, you know. I mean, cluster munitions are arguably as equally evil as, you know, sexual perversion, let's say. Now, by the way, you know what they claim? Who's they? I read it somewhere. That the most stolen book at the library is books about cannibalism. And why do people steal that book? Well, they're ashamed to check it out because they don't want the librarians gossiping, and then it gets to the bridge club. Oh yeah, well he's took out a book on cannibalism. What's wrong with our Billy? That he's reading up on cannibalism. But that's so Billy steals that book on cannibalism. So nobody knows, and then he reads it. Presumably hides it under his bed. But that's I can't recall having any wet dreams about cannibalism. Or did I? Did I at before I was 5 years old? Eating people. I've repressed that. All right, what's the point? Well, we're talking about Lilith. Are all deeply repressed desires sexual in nature, or could some have to do with cannibalism? I'm trying to think of other awful things that people might want to do to themselves or to each other. And reminds me of a joke I heard, but it was a true story of this Greek from America. He went back to the old country to visit, the home of his relatives, of his mother before she came to this country, and he got to talking to somebody on the bus, and oh, you're an American. Well, what's this Thanksgiving all about? They said, what's this Thanksgiving all about? Now, if you notice the Greeks have been fighting with the Turks for hundreds of years now. The Greeks versus the Turks, right? This is, well, no, but you know, people in Youngstown, Ohio, don't worry about that too much. But once you get to Europe, to your mother's hometown in Greece, and so he said on the bus, he was telling us, oh, well, what we do is we catch a turkey. And now everybody in the bus was sort of like woke up, says, what? Now when he says turkey, you know what they're thinking, okay? Then what do? Well, we kill him. Of course, you could kill him, you know. Oh, yeah, well, then what do? Well, we cook him. Oh, yeah, and then what do? Well, we eat him. Now, see, that makes perfect sense to an American thinking about Thanksgiving, right? That's what you do to the turkey. But, you know, the Greeks were thinking, oh, this is like a human being. This is a Turk that you've captured, see? So, anyway, when I heard that story, it was funny, you know? Maybe it is not so funny. All right. Bad jokes and bad astrology. But here's a very interesting configuration. We're still trying to figure out what it means. Okay, bye.